People say that in the West, some men aren't afraid of death, not until they're forced to look into the face of a woman. That morning, the sunrise over Red Bluff spilled a pale wash of light across the land, thin and watered down like cheap whiskey. The red earth stretched endlessly. Wind carried fine dust and the metallic scent of old horse stalls. Under the gray sky, a man waited alone at the stagecoach station. Elias McKenna, the kind of man who once made an entire county go silent with the sound of a cocked gun. He didn't carry a gun anymore, only a folded marriage contract. The edges softened with sweat. Wheels rumbled in the distance. The Santa Fe stagecoach rolled in, kicking up red dust that curled around his boots like ghosts from a past he tried to bury. The door opened. A woman stepped down, dressed in black, a wide hat shadowing half her face. She stood motionless for a moment, then loosened her scarf. Wind pulled her hair aside, revealing a face that was half smooth and youthful, weary but gentle, and the other half burned, tightened, scarred, a thin welt pulling one eyelid just slightly. Elias McKenna, the man who once dropped 3 bandits before they even touched their guns, froze. Every line he had rehearsed died somewhere in his throat. He wanted to say, "Welcome to Red Bluff," or at least, "Long ride, huh?" But nothing came out. He looked at her the way a man looks at the truth he isn't ready to face. The woman didn't wait long. Her voice was low, steady, dry like desert sand. "If you want to cancel the arrangement, I understand. The broker didn't tell you everything." Wind rushed through the space between them, carrying the smell of smoke and iron and all the years Elias had spent trying to forget. In her eyes, he saw something painfully familiar. Another survivor who no longer knew what to do with the life she had left. He swallowed and finally managed, "No. The agreement stands. Welcome to the McKenna Ranch." The stagecoach pulled away, leaving the two of them standing in the wind and dust. Elias picked up her luggage and led the way toward the 2-story cabin built into the hillside. He didn't know it yet, but that small decision had already set the two of them on a path neither understood. The house appeared in the fading light, big, solid, and cold. The windows were covered with torn cloth. The porch boards sagged under their weight. When Elias pushed the door open, a stale odor pushed out, dust, horse sweat, and the hollow smell of a place that hasn't held a heartbeat in a long time. The kitchen was barren. Salt, old coffee, some dried beans. The big dining table had a crack along the center. The chairs wobbled. A ripped curtain flapped tiredly. Elias set down his hat, unsure what to do in his own home. "I haven't had time to clean. Tomorrow I can..." She didn't wait for him to finish. She rolled up her sleeves, took off her gloves, and grabbed a bucket by the sink. "Is the well working?" "It is. Water's cold, though." "Cold water still cleans a table." The words came out sharp and precise, like a blade that knew exactly where to cut. Elias stood there watching her. From her hands, small, calloused, steady, came the sound of life. Soap, water, wood, something new mixing into the air. By late afternoon, the kitchen already felt different. She simmered a pot of beans with a bit of smoked meat. The smell filled the room, warming the walls. Elias sat at the table and ate in silence while she sat across from him, spoon in hand, posture calm. The wind scraped against the door, sounding like the house was finally exhaling after years of holding its breath. She set her spoon down. "How long have you lived alone?" 3 years. "Your wife passed?" "Yeah, explosion at the powder shed. I was close by." He didn't continue. His eyes drifted to the window. She nodded once, as if she understood without needing details. "I know the smell of fire, too. It never really leaves your skin." Elias stopped. his spoon hovering. It was the first time he really looked at her. Not at the scar, but at the truth inside her voice. That quiet, unfixable guilt. After dinner, she cleaned the dishes. He opened his mouth to say something, but couldn't find the words. She spoke first, without turning around. "I came here to work, not to be pitied. If you want something else, I can leave in the morning." "No, stay." The word came out faster than he expected. It wasn't just a request. It was a plea, a fragile hope that this tiny spark might warm the house again. When night settled, she said she'd sleep in the small room beside the kitchen, near the stove. "You can use the bigger room upstairs," he offered. "It used to be my wife's, but no, I don't sleep in someone else's bed." She lifted her little trunk and quietly shut the door behind her. Elias stood at the bottom of the stairs, hand on the rail, listening to the soft crackle of firewood. It felt like he'd invited a spirit back into the house, yet didn't know how to say thank you for it. The next morning, the smell of coffee drifted through the kitchen. Elias came down and saw her scrubbing rust from an old pot, hair tied up, old shirt rolled at the sleeves. He paused at the doorway, afraid to break the moment. Without turning, she asked, "Strong coffee or weak?" "Strong." "Good. Me too." Just a few words, and somehow the morning felt like a place where good things might grow again. That afternoon, she stitched together a curtain from fabric she found in a trunk. When she hung it, sunlight streamed through the cloth and spread soft, honey-colored patterns over the table. Elias leaned against the doorway and watched her silhouette in the light. For the first time, he wasn't seeing the scar. He was seeing someone who survived, someone who refused to disappear. Outside, the wind picked up. In Red Bluff, the wind never really stops. But inside that wooden house, for the first time in 3 years, Elias heard something else. Not gunfire, not silence. The sound of someone living. On that harsh red land, 2 scarred souls were learning how to exist again. One had killed to survive. One had been burned and left behind. And now, in the same house, they were learning how to breathe again. Time in Red Bluff moved slowly, like rainwater sliding off a tin roof. Every morning, Elias headed to the stables before sunrise, and May lit the stove in the kitchen. At noon, they crossed paths on the porch. A few words were exchanged, then silence again, each returning to their own tasks. From silence came small conversations. From strangers came 2 quiet rhythms learning how to breathe in the same house. Didn't talk much, but everything she touched changed the place. Curtains were mended. The floor was scrubbed so clean the wood creaked under their boots. Whenever Elias returned from the pastures, there was fresh coffee on the stove, warm cornbread wrapped in an old cloth, and a lamp waiting on the table no matter how late he came home. Elias wasn't used to being cared for. He moved around his own house like a man unsure where to put his hands. But every time he opened the door, he didn't hear emptiness anymore. He heard fabric swaying, the broom brushing the floor, another human being breathing in the same space. One evening he said, "You don't have to do all this, May. I hired you to work, not to rebuild my entire house." Without looking up, she answered, "Where a person lives, they should make it livable, Mr. McKenna." He didn't argue. Later that night, lying in his old bed, Elias realized he couldn't hear the wind screaming through the cracks in the wall anymore. All he heard was a soft fire downstairs, the fire she kept alive. Days moved. The distance between them narrowed, stretched, narrowed again. They worked. They ate. They existed in a silence that no longer felt cold. Sometimes, when May needed dough, Elias paused just to listen. The faint rhythm of her breath, or a soft hum of a tune that didn't have lyrics, only peace. One morning, as Elias prepared the wagon to ride into town, he asked, "You need anything?" "Sugar and sewing thread. I'll pick them up. I'm coming with you." He almost said no. Red Bluff wasn't kind. People used looks sharper than knives, but the way May held his eyes left him without a reason to refuse. They rode together in the old buckboard, past cracked red hills, cactus fields, and circling crows. When the town appeared, a few wooden buildings, a small church, the saloon, the general store, May pulled up her scarf. She knew what awaited. As soon as they stepped down, conversations died. Eyes turned, some curious, some pitying, some cruel. A man near the hitching post whistled under his breath and whispered something that made his friends snicker. Elias's jaw tightened. May didn't flinch. She walked forward with her spine straight, her gaze fixed ahead. Outside the general store, the preacher's wife, Mrs. Hartwell, smiled too brightly to be sincere. "Well, Mr. McKenna, and this must be the mail-order bride? How noble of you. A true Christian heart, taking in someone less fortunate." May didn't answer. Elias said, "We just need supplies. Excuse us." "But of course, I will pray for both of you." She left a trail of perfume and muttering behind her. Inside, two young women covered their mouths to hide their giggles, staring openly at May's scar. The store clerk nodded at Elias but kept his eyes fixed on May's face. May stayed calm, choosing flour, sugar, thread, moving as if no voices existed. Then Silas Boone appeared. Clean clothes, polished boots, a grin like he owned the whole street. "Elias," he drawled. "Heard you got married. Through the mail. Funny I wasn't invited to the celebration." There wasn't a celebration. Figures. With a bride like that, why throw a party? Elias clenched his fists until his knuckles went white. But he didn't speak. Silas tilted his head, staring at May. "Got to admire the courage, walking around without scaring the horses." The words hit like a slap. May didn't respond. She simply lifted a heavy sack of flour onto her shoulder and carried it to the wagon. Elias watched her go, feeling not only anger, but something sharper. Shame. On the way home, neither spoke. The wagon wheels ground against the dirt. Finally, May broke the silence. "You don't owe me defense, Mr. McKenna. People are free to laugh." Elias stared ahead, voice rough. Sometimes I don't know what to say without making it worse." Silence is also a side you choose. He didn't speak the rest of the way. That night, May washed the dishes. Elias sat outside staring at the stars. Cold light scattered like needles across the sky. He thought of her steady hands lifting the flour sack, her straight back while people whispered. He thought of his late wife, Sarah, who never had to face such cruelty. She had died because of a stray bullet he couldn't stop. Elias didn't sleep. He heard May's footsteps in the small room by the kitchen, the creak of the floorboards, the soft opening of a window. He realized he had spent 3 years living in silence because silence meant no risk. But silence never saved anyone from loneliness. A week later, a sandstorm trapped them inside the house for 3 days. Wind howled. Grit pushed through every crack, coating their clothes, their hair, their skin. They shut every door and cooked whatever scraps they had. On the first day, they barely spoke beyond necessities. Firewood, water, blankets. On the second day, when the storm softened, Elias brought out a deck of cards. "You know how to play?" "No, I only know how to count money." "Same thing." They played. She lost every round. Her frustration flushed her cheeks bright red. Elias laughed, the first real laugh in years. "You cheating?" "No, I'm just better." "Worse. That's the word you want." She threw a card at him. It hit his chest and fell. They both burst into laughter. Their laughter mixed with the wind outside, and for a moment, the house laughed with them. On the third night, they sat by the fire. May read aloud from a book Elias once read to Sarah. Her voice was low, slightly scratchy, but every word felt steady. Elias watched her. He wasn't seeing the scar anymore. He was seeing the firelight on her face. She dozed off mid-sentence. The book slipped from her hand. Her head tilted. Elias stood, gently picked her up. She was light and warm. He carried her to the small bed by the stove, pulled a blanket over her shoulders. She murmured something in her sleep, maybe a name, maybe a piece of a dream. He couldn't hear the words, only the thudding of his own heart. He turned to leave. The door creaked. He froze, hand trembling. In the flickering firelight, he saw the memory of Sarah smiling, soft, sad. "You're still alive, Elias," she told him in memory. "So live." He stood there a long time, then stepped out, leaving the warm room behind him. The next morning, May woke with the quilt tucked around her and the book folded neatly at her side. She touched the edge of the bed, feeling a warmth she couldn't explain. They never spoke of that night, but something changed. Elias began to meet her eyes when he spoke. May stopped covering her face with a scarf when she walked into the yard. At noon, she planted wildflowers along the porch. Elias watched, then asked quietly, "What kind of flowers are those?" "No idea. They grow where fire passed through. I guess they're the type that survives ash." Elias touched the soil. It was ash, real ash, but in the ash was green. He understood then, maybe they were just like those wildflowers. In those first weeks in Red Bluff, they didn't talk about love. They simply learned how to stay, under the same roof, breathing the same air. But beyond the quiet, Red Bluff still whispered, judged, waited for its chance to snuff out the small flame they'd kindled together. Because not everyone in that town wanted to see something broken learn how to bloom. Spring in Red Bluff arrived like it was unsure of the invitation. A little new grass on red earth, a few quick showers that vanished as fast as they came. Folks said spring only visited the people who still dared to believe. Elias and May kept living the way they had learned together, quiet and steady. Not many words, a few small smiles most outsiders would miss. But peace is the most fragile thing. One breath of wind in the wrong direction and it shatters. On a Saturday morning, May said she needed thread and a little fabric dye. Elias stayed behind with the horses. He did not know that in Red Bluff, stories never travel alone. They always bring someone's tongue with them. Inside the general store, while May picked through her list, 3 women stood at the far counter, the preacher's wife among them, the same pair who had giggled the week before. Their voices were soft, yet in the quiet wooden room, each word rang like a whetstone on steel. Poor Mr. McKenna, bringing home a thing like that. Poor nothing. I heard they do not even share a room. A woman like her, how could he touch her? Best that way, keeps a monster from being born. The last line soured the air, turned the smells of cloth and pine into something bitter. May went still. Her back stayed straight. Her face did not move. Her scarred hand tightened around a spool of thread until it squealed. She set the items down and walked out without a word. Outside, the sky had turned a heavy gray. Wind funneled down the street and kicked dust into the doorways. No one followed her. That afternoon, Silas Boone rode up to the McKenna place. Elias was out in the pasture, so May was alone. She heard hooves in the yard, then a coarse voice on the porch. When she opened the door, Silas stood there in a clean coat with a smile that looked like a cut. "Quiet place this evening. Thought I would pay my respects. McKenna busy?" May said, If you have something to say it. Gladly. I brought a gift. He set a thick envelope on the railing. $500. Enough to get you somewhere else, to the east maybe. Big churches there. Better people. They will not look at you like they do here. May stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. Why are you doing this? Because I know him. McKenna is decent, but he is afraid. You saw it in town. He would not defend you. He would not take your hand, would not meet your eyes when others were watching. A man like that is carrying duty, not feeling. He deserves someone else. You deserve to be left in peace. His tone had that slickness men use when they pretend to be generous. May said, "If I want to go, I will go without your money." Silas shrugged. Self-respect is fine. Money makes the road shorter. He swung into the saddle. I will leave it there. Think on it. By week's end, I will pretend we never talked. Dust rose behind him and then fell. May stood alone while wind tugged at her skirt. She looked at the white envelope heavy on the rail, then turned inside. On the kitchen table, Elias's cup still held a dried crescent of coffee. She sat and stared at it and whispered, "You are as quiet as this cup." When Elias came home at dusk, he found her folding clothes with a small valise open on the bed. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Packing," she said. "You do not need a housekeeper forever." "Who told you that?" "No one. I just will not be a weight." He frowned and stepped closer. What happened? She lifted her head, and her eyes were winter cold. "Do you really want to know? People were right. You pity me. You do not care for me. If I leave tomorrow, will you regret it?" Elias opened his mouth, but his mind came up empty. He had fought horses all day until nothing was left except breath. He wanted to say, "Do not go." He wanted to say, "I do not know how to live if you walk out of this house." But what escaped was, "It is complicated, May. Maybe you would be happier somewhere else." The words fell like a stone into deep water. No echo. May nodded. "Then good. Thank you for being honest." She closed the valise and tied the strap. She did not look back. Elias stood there wanting to move, wanting to take it back, but his feet would not obey. In his head, Sarah's voice, a memory or a conscience, said, "You are afraid again, Elias." Wind picked up after dark. Elias went to the barn, sat with his back against the wall, and opened an old bottle. The smell of hay and liquor and emptiness wrapped around him. He heard soft noises in the house, a suitcase bumping a doorway, a latch taken gently, footsteps across the porch. Then silence. When he woke, morning had already paled the windows. The house was hollow. On the table, the scarf May had hung was still there, and the new blue cloth she had bought the week before lay flat beneath a small note written in neat, slanted letters. "I thank you for sheltering me. I am sorry I dreamed too much." Elias read it and sat down hard, hands hanging useless. It felt like someone had torn something out of his chest and left him breathing anyway. He did not eat that day. At dusk, the wind lifted the note and slid it off the table. He picked it up, thought about fire, and could not do it. He set it back where it had been, whole, a wound that refused to close. The next day, the McKenna place spoke only in the language of hooves, wind, and tin cups tapping a bottle. The house that had just learned how to carry warmth went cold again. Elias stood on the porch and stared down the road toward town, toward that bend where a woman's figure would have grown smaller and smaller until nothing remained. He did not follow. Sometimes it does not take a storm to lose everything. Sometimes silence is enough. Red Bluff keeps its wind. It blows whether you ask it to or not. But that day, It did not only carry grit and dust. It carried away the only warmth that had taught that house to breathe. 3 days after May left, Elias's house smelled like old whiskey and cold ashes. He kept the curtains shut. He did not light the stove. Every night he drank until the oil lamp burned itself dry and the room sank back into darkness. On the 4th morning, old Ruth Carter showed up, owner of the saloon. The woman who once took Elias in after the war chewed him up. She knocked. No answer. Knocked harder. Still nothing. So she kicked the door open and stepped into the stale air. "You look like a starved ghost, Elias McKenna." "Go away, Ruth." "Not a chance. You are doing the dumbest thing a man can do, letting the best woman you ever met walk away because you are too scared to fight for her." He did not answer. Ruth scanned the room. The curtain May had sewn was still up. The coffee cup on the table still had her lipstick on it. "Sarah is gone, Elias. She does not need you clinging to that foolish vow anymore. You think she wants to look down and see you drinking yourself to death?" His jaw tightened. "I killed her, Ruth. I pulled the trigger. I do not deserve anyone. She died because of exploding gunpowder, not because of you. And May is alive. You are letting her die inside because you are too much of a coward to choose the living over the dead. You have 2 choices, Elias. Keep living with ghosts, or go find the person who still breathes." She left a full water jug on the table and walked out. The sentence, "Go find the person who still breathes," rang inside his skull for hours. By late afternoon, Jonah the stable boy came galloping in, breathless. "Elias! Bandits from the south! They rode into town! They are firing at people! May is there!" Elias stood so fast his chair fell backward. Every muscle tightened. "Where?" "At Ruth's boarding house. She is helping kids get inside." He did not wait to hear more. He ran inside and threw open an old trunk. Inside was the Colt 1851 Navy revolver he had sworn never to touch again. His hand shook as he wiped the dust off. The steel was freezing. His palms burned hot. Memories slammed into him. The explosion, Sarah's scream, the smell of burnt hair and gunpowder. He loaded the cylinder. Every bullet dropping in sounded like a funeral bell. "Forgive me, Sarah," he whispered, "but this time I am not letting the fire take someone I can still save." He swung into the saddle. The wind was stained red by the setting sun. The 4-mile ride into Red Bluff blurred into a streak of hooves and dust. Town was chaos. Gunshots, screams, smoke rising from broken windows. 6 bandits tearing through the street, grabbing money, dragging horses. A little boy sobbed in a doorway. Elias rode straight into them, drawing the gun before the horse even stopped. The first shot hit the shoulder of the lookout. He dropped screaming. 2 more turned toward him. Before they could aim, Elias ducked low and fired twice. 1 bullet knocked a pistol out of a hand. The other clipped a hat clean off. Powder smoke filled the street. People ran for cover. Across the road, May was shoving children into the church, shielding them with her body. She spotted him. Elias, riding through smoke like a shadow of the man he used to be, but this time fighting to protect, not destroy. 1 bandit crouched behind the saloon bar, gun aimed at Elias's back. May saw it. She pushed a child aside and ran. The gun cracked. The bullet tore through the air and struck her in the side. Elias spun at the sound of her cry. He saw her collapse, her black dress blooming red. Something inside him snapped open like a dam. He charged, firing with a precision that came from somewhere past rage. The last bandit fell. Smoke thinned. The wind carried iron and blood. Elias dropped to his knees beside May. Blood soaked his hands. "May, stay with me. Do not close your eyes." "You swore you would never pick up a gun again," she whispered. "Shut up. I picked it up to keep you here. Do you hear me?" She smiled faintly, lips trembling. "You do not understand, Elias. I am not afraid of fire anymore. I am only afraid of being forgotten again. No one could ever forget you. Do not let me go. If there is anything in you that still wants to hold on." Her voice disappeared into a gasp. He scooped her into his arms and yelled for help. Ruth burst out of the saloon and ran toward them. "Bring her inside!" Ruth shouted. "Hurry up, you fool! She is still breathing!" Men held doors. Women tore cloth for bandages. Someone fetched whiskey and boiling water. In the middle of the chaos, Elias caught sight of Silas Boone standing far down the street. No smirk, no swagger. Only the face of a man realizing he had never once been brave. Night fell. May drifted in and out of consciousness. Ruth changed dressings. Elias sat beside her, never letting go of her hand. Red Bluff held its breath. At dawn, the first thin strip of light slid through the curtain. May blinked. She whispered, voice raw. "Did you win?" "No, I survived. That is enough." His head lowered, tears falling onto her hand. Tears he had not shed since Sarah died. "I swore I would never touch a gun again, May. But if I ever make another vow, it will be this. I will only use a gun to protect what I cannot afford to lose." Her eyes softened. She breathed out slowly. "Then you already saved it." He stayed there until full daylight. Outside, the town was quietly repairing the damage, burying the bandits. No one whispered about May anymore. They talked about the scarred woman who saved a child, and the man who rode into hell to bring her back. That evening, Ruth appeared in the doorway. "She will live," Ruth said, "but she will always be weak. You understand?" "I understand." "What are you going to do now?" "Live," he said, "with her." Ruth nodded, eyes shining. "And then you are not a coward anymore." In Red Bluff, people still say the sky turned blood red that day. But in the middle of gunfire and smoke, a man who had buried himself in the past finally reached out and chose the living. He did not shoot to kill, he shot to save. 3 weeks after the shootout, Red Bluff was no longer the same. Holes in the walls were patched. Roofs were repaired with fresh-cut lumber. Children ran in the street again. People told the story of that afternoon the way legends begin. A gunslinger haunted by his past, and a scarred woman who saved a town with her own body. Downstairs at the boarding house, May Hollis lay in a small bed near the window. Sunlight touched both her old burn scars and the new bandages, like a roadmap of a life that had never known a straight path. Every morning she woke to the same thing, a warm hand quietly holding hers. Elias sat in the chair beside her, eyes tired, beard untrimmed, shirt still dusty from the ranch. When the nurse finally left them alone, he whispered, voice rough as gravel, "You hurting?" "Only when you let go. Then I will not." May smiled. A real smile, the kind that pulled the scar on her cheek and made her eyes brighter. The first day May could sit up, Elias helped her outside to the porch. She leaned on a cane, slow and careful. Each step took effort, but no one held her. He simply stayed close enough for her to take his hand whenever she needed. Ruth stood in the doorway, arms crossed, shaking her head with a soft laugh. "You two look like people learning to walk again after another lifetime." "Maybe that is exactly what we are," Elias said. They left Red Bluff for the ranch one windy morning. The road seemed wider than before. The house waited at the end of the trail, silent but steady. Dust coated the windows, yet the green curtain May had sewn still hung there. When she opened the door, the old smell of ash and smoke drifted out, but it no longer frightened her. "We will rebuild," she said. "From the beginning, from where the fire stopped." Elias did not answer. He just walked to the well, filled a bucket, and began washing the table. She watched him, then grinned, leaning on her cane as she stepped beside him to help. Neither of them needed to say anything. Words finally meant something in that house. By June, the garden bloomed. Under May's hands, tomato plants grew thick. Rows of beans curled around stakes, and wildflowers pushed through last year's ashes. She moved slower now, but everything she did had patience. Elias cared for her the same way he cared for the land, firm when needed, gentle when it mattered. One evening, after dinner, Elias opened a small wooden box. Inside was not a gun, but a deed transferring half the ranch. He slid it toward her. "If you want to stay, this will be your home as much as mine. Not charity, a partnership. You think I'm planning to leave? I think everyone deserves the right to choose, even someone you love." May looked at the paper, at the uneven handwriting. Then she folded it and placed it back on the table. "I already left once, Elias, and I learned that everywhere else was just shelter. This is the only place that feels like home." He did not speak. He simply reached out and touched the scar on her cheek. This time he did not hesitate. She closed her eyes and leaned into his palm. In the quiet of that evening, the two of them let out a breath they had been holding for years. By late summer, the town began whispering about the scarred woman living at the McKenna ranch. No more cruel jokes. People said she could sew up a wounded horse better than any doctor, that her pies were the best in the territory, that sometimes, on warm evenings, she taught the ranch hands' kids to read from an old Bible on the porch. Even Pastor Hartwell's wife came by with a jar of peach preserves, muttering an awkward apology. May smiled and accepted it. She neither forgave nor rejected. She simply moved on. One evening, Silas Boone rode past the ranch. He stopped, hand on the saddle horn. For a moment it looked like he might speak, but all he did was tip his hat. Elias stood by the fence and nodded back. No forgiveness was needed. Acceptance was enough. Both men had survived the same storm and were too tired to hate. That night the sky was full of stars. May sat on the porch, a worn blanket around her shoulders. Elias sat next to her, coffee in hand, staring across the new garden. "You still have that gun, don't you?" "I do." "You still afraid of it?" "No, but I do not need it anymore." "Why not?" "Because what I need to protect is no longer out there." May leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "And if someday I am too weak to do anything at all, then I will cook, and you will tell stories." "What stories?" "The story of the woman who taught a gunfighter how to live." She laughed softly, tired but warm. "And the story of the man who taught a scarred woman she was worth looking at? You tell that one. You are better with words than I am." Over them the stars glowed like cooled silver. The house was still old, but the light coming from the window was warmer than anything in town. On the porch, two figures sat close, not needing to speak. Elias set his cup down and murmured, almost like a prayer, "If there is a next life, I hope I meet you again. Not because of debt, but because I am grateful." May closed her eyes, smiling. "If there is a next life, I hope you recognize me, even without the scar." "I will, because scars are not on the skin, May. They stay in the places that remind us why we are still alive." They sat like that until the wind shifted and carried the scent of wildflowers across the porch. Above them, the moon rose bright and pale like a healed scar. Some people say love is light, but out here in places like Red Bluff, where the wind can burn your face and the nights get so cold the heart goes quiet, love is not light at all. It is warmth. Sometimes just a small flame inside an old house, in two hearts that thought they had already burned out. Elias and May did not get a perfect ending. They still carry scars. They still remember what they lost. But they chose to stay. Stay with each other. Stay with life. And sometimes that is all it takes to call something happiness. If you have ever been afraid to love again, if you ever thought you were no longer worthy of being seen with gentle eyes, remember this. Wildflowers still grow in the ashes. Scars, whether on skin or somewhere deeper, only prove that you survived. And if this story touched even the smallest corner of your heart, hit like so I know you are still here.